Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show, the show that celebrates the many people who are working so hard in the trenches across this great state to make Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. I want to welcome you again and hope you had a great weekend. And before we go to our guest, which is Hunter Dawkins, in fact, Hunter's over in Arizona. He's going to be coming to us from Arizona. I want to go to our friend Cal Curley, the producer of the Ricky Matthews Show, and just check in with him. We hadn't been together in a while. Yeah, I never know what Cal's going to do to the graphics for our YouTube and Facebook audience, but he's been doing some creative work. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. So anyway, how you been?
Been doing pretty good. Just kind of winding down one season of things and starting up another season. Just bouncing between high school football, travel baseball, Saints, Pelicans, just filling in for the Pelicans. You know, it's typical for October, November.
Yeah. Speaking of Pelicans, we'll be talking a lot more about Pelicans in just a week or two or three. I read a really good article this morning on NOLA.com that talked about how he's come into this season ready to go. Hopefully we don't go into January again without him. They've had to deal with a lot of immaturity and lack of focus and all the things that have ultimately probably led to his injuries. But, once again, we entered the season with the Pelicans with them having some hope.
I really think this season with Zion in particular has to be a make or break season for him. I think he's healthy coming into the season. It's in my own mind. Not that I've heard anything that's just what I feel. This has got to be the season where he puts up or just totally shuts up and goes somewhere else and let's move on. He's got to be able to sustain a full season, and he's got to put up numbers and behave off the court and be his own man.
Yeah, he had a really interesting relationship that he had to break up from. There's been questions about his commitment to doing the kind of things he's got to do with that big body of his to be ready for the enduring and physical nature of the season. And the truth is, it's interesting. If you look at his career, the total number of games that he's actually played is equivalent to about one season. But he's been in the NBA for 4 years. So it's not been good. And they did try to shop him around, but they didn't, no one was interested. So they got to double down on him. And again, he's saying the right things. He certainly seems to be in shape, but has he really been refining his body the way he's got to, preparing his body the way he's got to for a long season? We shall soon see, don't you think?
Yeah, I really think the first handful of games, first 2-3 weeks, we'll know what kind of team we have and what kind of Zion we have.
Yeah, man, we spent the last over 3 years talking to Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com at the Times-Picayune with all the twists and turns related to the Saints on a weekly basis. We went into this season hoping the Saints would be so much better. It's been a tough season. It's been hard to watch, hasn't it, my friend?
Yeah, it really has. I think it's probably as fans we come into it going, we've got, on paper, probably one of the best teams in the NBA outside of the handful that's stacked at the top. The Bucks come to mind now with their two signed for the next couple of years. And you've always got the Lakers to deal with, which even in their bad years, for the most part, they're a team that can get hot and go. Celtics are going to be unbelievable again. It's just, you want to see if they can compete, and you want to see them fight to the last minute and not get blown out.
Yeah. So how's the gig at the Superdome been going?
That's been going pretty good. I kind of like where we're going with it. We've changed up. We've probably went from 80% hip hop to maybe 60% hip hop now. So, small changes. Then it's enough to, move the meter one way or the other. So I haven't heard any complaints out of New Orleans radio lately. So
just need you to continue to play a great repertoire of music so the Saints can win.
Oh, yeah, that's always been my deal. I mean, whether it's music they give me or music I find myself, it's just a matter of putting it all in a package and splitting it up so it doesn't seem it's one way or the other. It's just like programming a radio station, any music station. It's the same thing, just different songs, different eras. That's all. No doubt.
Well, listen, thanks for all you're doing to keep this show moving right along. I can set my clock by you. Hey, listen, I was doing some reading the other day, and I read something that reminded me of something that I had written some time back. And I have a pretty organized approach to when I do write. I write a lot prior to my shows, and so you can imagine over the course of over 3.5 years of over 900 conversations, the amount of inspiration that I get during my various shows and before my shows as I do my research about my show guests. And Hunter Dawkins, who is the owner and publisher for the Gazebo Gazette, is going to be joining me in just a second. But I wanted to read something that I wrote. I don't even remember where it was, when it was, but I just ran across it. And sometimes when I write something, it helps to kind of put it aside, and then I come back to it again and look at it again and say, does that tell what I'm trying to say? And in this case, it did. It speaks to something I learned as a publisher of a newspaper, and that is that a newspaper providing information to a community is really important. Providing unbiased information and thoughtful information and well-researched information to an audience, to readers, so that they can have sort of this unbiased information and then draw their own conclusions. We live in a world where we're drawing conclusions before we have the facts, too often, or we're just avoiding the facts altogether and we're just drawing a conclusion. But we live in a crazy world with social media and all that. But I think that if a community will focus on this thing that I'm about to share with you that I wrote, that we can overcome a lot. I mean, this is true for the state of Mississippi. It's true for every community across the state of Mississippi. And it speaks to the importance of information. It speaks to the importance of providing the kind of outlet for people who are in a democracy to be able to speak out and have a voice. And here's what I wrote. Silence is the enemy of progress. Protecting the status quo, which incidentally too many communities do, protecting the status quo in a community too often means working overtime to keep the peace and avoiding conflict. It means steering away from the sort of honesty, diverse voices, and constructive criticism that could contribute to building a stronger, better, and more competitive region and a quality of life second to none. Solutions to problems and challenges never follow silence. Solutions to problems and challenges never follow silence. I love that. I don't get too involved in issues on this show, but I tell you, when I do, it's well researched and people are engaged, and change can come. And I can think of a couple of issues that I was involved with where change did come. And I'm proud of that I was speaking out on a specific thing that others weren't talking about, and I was willing to go there, and it made some people mad. Not many, but people involved in the issue, it made mad because they were trying to either do something underhanded behind the scenes, or they were trying to protect the status quo. And we don't move the ball forward if we're not focused on moving, having the kind of conversations in a democracy that you need to have, or we'll end up where Jerry St. Pé has said so many times, and that is that we end up getting complacent. And when we get complacent, that's not a good place to be. Anyway, let me move now to my friend Hunter Dawkins. He's a SuperTalk Mississippi contributor. He's a publisher and owner of the Gazebo Gazette and a regular here on my show. And he's actually coming to the show today from Arizona. How you doing, my friend?
Good morning, Ricky. I'm doing well. It's funny that you say that about the complacency. One of the statements and one of the quotes that I remember very well was from one of the things I used to read where Martin Luther King gave a quote and said, "Hell has the hottest place in hell is a place of complacency about issues and concerning one other group or another." And I certainly agree with that when you look into it.
You know, what I have found in my career is that, as a general rule, people don't like conflict. And so I think that's a Southern trait, really, to be honest with you. We don't like conflict, so we avoid conflict. But sometimes you have to have conflict. Sometimes you have to have diverse points of view. And when that happens, good things can come from it. People can find solutions. But why don't we do this? I'll get your comment to that when we pick it up on the other side as we continue our conversations with Hunter Dawkins. We'll see you after this. From the Citizens Bank studio, forgot to say that at the beginning of the show. I've got to get in that mode. I'm so thrilled to have Citizens Bank as a studio sponsor now, and their work in the community has been terrific. And Greg Cronin and others at that company have just been contributing to this community in so many amazing ways. Thrilled to have Citizens Bank as a sponsor of the Ricky Matthews Show. As I mentioned when we went to break, that it's sort of a Southern thing to avoid conflict. We don't like conflict, and as a publisher, I would say I went through a metamorphosis. I went from I get it, I'm trying to avoid conflict, to I'm not steering away from conflict when conflict's going to be the right thing to do. And when you're a publisher and you take that point of view, there are some people get mad at you, and some never forget it, to be quite honest with you. But it just goes with the territory, doesn't it, my friend?
That's certainly right, Ricky. I've got subscribers that they will, constantly be on my butt about stuff like that I said, even though they're not necessarily diminishing their ability to get to read and to follow me. They definitely, it's a good old bless your heart.
Well, I remember when Stan Tyner, who was the editor of the newspaper for my time at the Sun Herald, and Stan would come in and shut the door, and he says, "Oh, we got a phone call we need to make." So I'd get the background, and we would make the phone call. But I'd often get phone calls, and if Karen Shook, for the majority of the time that I was the publisher, Karen Shook, who now lives up in North Mississippi and recently retired, incidentally, terrific. She was so awesome. She was my assistant during the times that I was doing a lot of traveling for Knight Ridder, and she kind of helped keep everything straight for me. Just an incredible assistant. But she would take down name and number if I wasn't in there, and I would I'd call people back really quickly. But when I was in my office, I answered my own phone, and I surprised people when I answered the phone. And sometimes just if somebody's mad and I answer, and they're like taken aback by the fact that I actually answered the phone, that I could say we're expecting to leave a message. And the way I talked about it, Hunter, I would say I'm taking the medicine, whatever it is. Sometimes they were right, to be honest with you. Sometimes they were wrong, but I never treated them ever, whether they were right or wrong, never treated them like they were wrong. I mean, I can remember only a couple of times when someone was so offensive that it caused me to come back to them kind of strong in a disagreeable way if I felt like they were completely off base. But I just found listening to people sometimes is some of the best medicine for them and for me and for our company, and being willing to listen when there are lots of voices about how to solve a certain problem, or if there's an error that we made at the newspaper, you got to be willing to listen. But when you're the publisher, you get to talk to a lot of people, don't you?
Well, yeah, Ricky, and I think being raised with two parents that were involved heavily in public service, that gave me the idea of how to listen, how to treat people. And I have several people with disagreements with me, and people that comment to me on Facebook or send me text messages or call. And I try to give them the best ability to listen and respect and hear what they're saying. And the only time I really ever get, supremely offended is if somebody questions my work ability, how much I work at something, and the fact of the newspaper itself, that it's not, 100% not, and it's like, well, have you read it? I mean, that's the only portion of it, and I get really upset. But for the most part, I try to listen to people, and I try to hear about things of what's going on from their points of view, because everybody's got a different point of view, and I try to listen and take into account every little bit in detail, because like you said, a lot of times they know more something about a certain specific area than I do.
Hey, here's what I've learned. And, again, we're talking about this thing that I wrote some time ago that said silence is the enemy of progress, that solutions to problems and challenges never follow silence. And I can think of so many examples. Let me give two. Actually, one involves your mother. Your mother was a Senator, Deborah Dawkins, and she was super active in the community, very active. I didn't always agree with your mother's approach. I just did. But I had tremendous respect for her, so that when we talked, we may disagree about a policy decision or whatever, but we always had. I think she would say she had good respect for me. I certainly had great respect for her. I think that a disagreement about a single thing doesn't define a relationship, and when someone knows they can communicate with you, it opens up future communication when you either agree or maybe you want to know more, and you could call your mom and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And she was always thoughtful and did her homework. You weren't going to outwork your mother, were you?
Well, and that's the thing too, Ricky, is that I followed a lot of her things, but I didn't agree with my mother on everything. I can guarantee you there were policies and decisions, but she and I came from different walks of life. And even though I'm her son, we came from different walks of life. We grew up in different avenues, and I had to learn how to understand that versus just, oh, well, your feeling on this is, this is, and there's more than just black and white in policy decisions. There's always a gray area where you have to hear from people. And that's one of the reasons why my mother was there for 20 years, is that she heard and listened to people quite a bit.
Hey, listen, there were lots of events as a publisher, but I think one that probably defines one of the best lessons I got, and it was led by a group of people who came in, led by Felicia Dunn Burke, who's a terrific leader in this community. And Felicia came in and brought some leaders and people who lived in Turkey Creek. We had run an editorial supporting an economic development project up around I-10, and it had some environmental issues attached to it. It had some it was potentially going to create a problem for Turkey Creek.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. Some old school Louisiana money coming in from that. So
yeah, it was a very, very interesting project, and we hadn't really done our homework the way we needed to do it. We didn't take the time to understand, could this potentially contribute to flooding that was occurring in Turkey Creek? And so Felicia brought this group of leaders in, and we sat down with them. And I honestly didn't know what to expect. I was very open to having them come into our conference room, and we brought the leaders of our newsroom together, and we all sat together. But I later told Felicia, and it seemed like not long ago I said it again, but it changed me as a publisher at that moment. And what I came to appreciate is that there are as many sides to a story as there are people involved in the story. So there really aren't two sides to a story. There's always all these different perspectives to a story. And you can never assume that The point is, you can't get so busy that you buy into, God, this is a great economic development project. We're going to roll with that. That sounds great. We can live with whatever the negative issues that might come from it. That in other words, you're moving so fast that you don't take the time to understand, well, what's the other side of this? We don't have to rush to do an editorial. Why don't we bring leaders in that community in, and let's hear from them. Let's hear what they have to say. It will change your perspective. And all of that preceded Hurricane Katrina. And so it was a good lesson for me to get. It's almost like divine intervention in a way, and in preparation for the leadership I needed to provide after Hurricane Katrina. And it affected me when I was leading the oil recovery efforts in Alabama, when I went into the southern portions of Mobile County and Balabatry and places like that, and the Vietnamese community. And for example, we had Vietnamese interpreters, so we had to have Cambodian interpreters, and we had to really think through how do we make sure people can understand the conversations that are taking place and that we get their feedback. But it all goes back to that one meeting in the conference room that Felicia Dunn-Burke helped us put together, and it changed me as a leader, and it's still I'm that changed person even today as a result of it. Have you had defining moments like that in your time?
Of course, absolutely, Ricky. One of the things, and I'm not going to get on to the details of it because I still have to do a lot more, but one of the things I was going to say about it with Miss Felicia, with former Sierra Club president Rose Johnson, who passed, and a lot of other leaders.
Rose Johnson was in this meeting, yes.
In that community, they understood because they were part of that community, and that was more of something that affected them. And I think that was different than what you had heard from the economic point of view. And I had to take that myself because me looking into several different stories, what's this going to do? For example, there's a certain issue happening right now in Pascagoula with the Pass Estates community. Now, I'm not going to go into big detail about that because there's a lot of intricacies that I have to put together to be able to make it work. But that community is very troubled by how things are going, and it's in a low-income community, housing and things as such, but that will be in the future. And I've had the conversation with a bunch of people, and it's about what's affecting the community more than anything else.
Again, the more the sort of honesty, diverse voices, and constructive criticism that will ultimately contribute to a stronger community. There's no solutions and problems to problems or challenges that ever follow silence. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Hunter Dawkins. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. I have my friend Hunter Dawkins with me, and he's actually in Arizona, and he's coming to us from Arizona. So how's the weather in Arizona, my friend?
It was actually 40 degrees when I woke up this morning up in Sedona. Well, I'm actually in Prescott right now, but my boy lives in Sedona, Colby J. Dawkins, and so it was great. We had a great birthday party last night for him, and Ricky, I've got a teenager. I mean, I'm an old man now officially.
Hey, listen, when I worked for the Sun Herald, I was involved. Let me clear my throat. Hang on one second. There we go. I was involved in a users group, a press users group. You and I talked about it before, Rockwell International Gosh Users Group. And we often had meetings out in Phoenix, Arizona. And I loved it there. It was, the climate there is so different than here. I mean, you talk about dry. I mean, it's so different.
Well, Phoenix down, Prescott and Sedona are about 2.5 hours north of Phoenix in the mountains in Flagstaff. It's pretty much the highest it gets here is about 75 during the winter time, and or really during the fall. In the winter, it gets a lot colder, and it's an enjoyable right now because we've been blasted with that hot weather for 9 months, and so, but it's good.
Yeah, and we're all praying for rain down here, So I had a guy by the name of Cuz Strickland. Most hunters know Cuz because he starred in Hunting the Country for Mossy Oak for 20-something years, and he's still quite a celebrity in Mississippi, still works with Mossy Oak, and he was on my show, and he's got a podcast called Fistful of Dirt. It's about, hunters who plant food plots and who enjoy, being in the outdoors. That's what his podcast is about. I joked with him last Monday that his show that we should change the name of his show to A Fistful of Morning Dew because that's about all we have right now to keep our plants watered is the morning dew. So, man, have you ever seen a stretch like this with no rain?
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely dry, but we had that one little brief scenario of rain, and after that it got a lot cooler. So hopefully it stays the right weather at least.
Well, as you and I talk every time we talk, is you've been a prolific writer, not only for the Gazebo Gazette, but also as a SuperTalk Mississippi contributor on so many different subjects, and we appreciate your contributions. I don't know how you do what you do. I say that all the time. You're a jack of all trades. You're a busy guy. You got a strong work ethic, and you also do you do color for Gulfport High games. How's that gig working out for you?
It's phenomenal, Ricky. The only thing that I've been working with Harold, and we have got some great broadcast. Bob 106.3 every Friday night. You'll always hear me and Harold on there just around 7 o'clock all the way until the end of the game, back and forth, talking about this and discussing that. But, I really wish that, and this is not necessarily from our level, but that the state championships were available for SuperTalk, because they cover, the entire state high school football. They have 35 radio stations covering high school football all the way until the state championship. And then the All-Star game, the Bernard Blackwell Classic, which is right in Gulfport, which you would think that would be easy for us to do. Now they've got these exclusive agreements, and we have to have some discussion about that in the off season and trying to figure out what we can do to make it happen.
Well, who controls that? The high school coaches organization?
The Mississippi Association of Coaches control the Bernard Blackwell Classic, and the MHSA controls the state championship games. But there has to be some open door policy. I mean, there can't just be one-sided on all the way across the board. We, as SuperTalk, we have to get out there. We have to make a case about, we have all these people listening to us. Why can't we have some opportunity to make it happen? And I don't know if it's a money issue. I'm sure it is. But as you know, Steve Davenport, he'll fight to tooth and nail about that. So.
Yeah, I think, I don't know much about it, but just to hear you talk about it, it seems like SuperTalk would be a great partner, just because you've got the 12 SuperTalk stations, one of which we're on now, and we've got a total of 26 radio stations across the state of Mississippi. So if you're going to work with a partner that has the potential to really blast that game into a lot of radios across the state, this would be the one to work with. That's for sure. You continue to watch the Saints. We're actually taping this show just before the Saints play, so we won't know the outcome of that. But I can tell you this: no matter how the game turns out on Sunday, the reality is, what I'm hearing is that Carr, there's enough blame to go around, but Carr is under a tremendous amount of pressure, isn't he?
Well, and there's a lot of social media and a lot of network stuff out there about the play calling, the offensive production, and this, that, and the other. But there has to be some sort of answer when you have a quarterback who's only averaging 6.3 yards after 7 games per completion. We have to look and what are we doing wrong? Is it the matchups that we're making? Is it the plays that we're calling? Is it what? There has to be something. And they watch enough film during the week, Ricky, as you know. They have to find a common ground. And I really think that if we can find somewhere, because we have just as much talent, if not better, than most teams, and we should absolutely, as I told you before when we started the division, 11 games for us shouldn't be a problem. And I still feel that way. It shouldn't be with our schedule. If you look at our schedule, where are we lacking? We're lacking because we have to be able to focus on the right things. We have to get certain things right. And whether it's coaching, whether it's players, somebody needs to make the solution. And I hope it doesn't come from up top. I hope it comes from the players instead.
Hey, what's interesting, though, is if you go, and most of the Saints, folks who follow the Saints have probably by now read or seen videos related to the former quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, J.T. O'Sullivan, yeah, who Jeff interviewed after he did his quarterback session on on Derek Carr. He's got a PhD. He's a really smart guy. He does analysis extremely well. And when you go, it's a 45 minutes assessment of each play and what happened on each play. And I came out of that, again, we don't know how Sunday's game is going to go when this airs, but what I'm seeing is, based on that and all the other feedback, is that, people worried about play calling and worried about this and worried about Lave, but at the end of the day, as we learned with Drew Brees, a great quarterback can overcome a lot of problems because they can make decisions on the field. And what I saw in this analysis that JT O'Sullivan did is that Carr seems to have a difficult time taking the time to read the plays, and it's just dumping the ball off before it gets to the receiver. Now, is that something they can fix? Maybe, but then this notion of blaming others, like he's on the field showing frustration for somebody else when it's his fault. Yeah. The players see that, and it starts to create division on the team. And he should be providing leadership, but he's kind of playing a little bit of the blame game. And then when he talks about it, he acts like he's not, but he really is. These are the kind of problems you don't overcome in just one game.
Well, it's the process too, Ricky. I mean, it's the idea of me being a former coach. I went through a lot of these details. We're talking about, can you process, especially if you're a quarterback, you got to process the different plays, the different routes the receivers are running. Then you have to know in the back of your head, I've got 5 seconds to get rid of this ball, or somebody's going to come tear my head off. And then you have to be able to fill out, okay, well, if I throw it here, the safety's coming across here. If I throw it through the middle, the linebacker's coming there. You got to be able to process that. And hopefully you would think that Derek Carr, with the number of Pro Bowls he's been to, the number of things that has gone for him in the right direction, with the amount of talent that he has, you wouldn't think this would be a big issue. But it has certainly become more of an issue than we wanted.
Well, what I've seen, though, over the past week, and again, this is Monday. We don't know how the game went yesterday, but the bottom line is this: we saw a lot of emphasis on Pete Carmichael, and what I've noticed over the past week is that starting to shift more toward Derek Carr. And so can they fix it? Man, I hope they can. I mean, I really do. It seems like some of these issues are core problems, though, and it's like a sick company. Sometimes you don't fix the core problems unless you get some of the sick people out. I don't know how this is going to work.
Well, you would have thought by now that they would have gotten comfortable with each other. Maybe this is a reason why the quarterbacks should play more preseason games so they can develop this attitude and things like that. I don't know, but we'll see how it happens.
Yes, we will. We're talking with Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. Hey, when we come back, we're actually going to get the latest from the Gazebo Gazette, what's going on at his newspaper, and we'll remind you what that's all about as well as we continue after this break with my friend Hunter Dawkins. We'll see you after this. From the Citizens Bank studio, welcome to the final segment of the Ricky Matthews Show with my friend Hunter Dawkins, who's coming to us from Arizona today. He owns the Gazebo Gazette, and he's also the publisher there. He's a contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi Media. Covers college. He does color for Gulfport High games. He covers the New Orleans Saints. Again, he's a jack of all trades. But let's kind of zero into your world for a second. How are things going at your newspaper these days?
Well, Ricky, before Election Day, the political ads are starting to pile up. Everybody's trying to get their word out. Then, of course, there's Halloween. That's a big deal with a lot of the garden communities, especially with one of my clients and one of my favorite people, Pine Hills Nursery out by Camor's. They've done a great job at least putting together your different levels of plant, and I guess what's the proper word for that, arboretum style stuff. I mean, I'm of course confused with that. With my mom would definitely be angry at me right now. But that being said, and there's a lot of really festivals kind of closing up right before the holidays, and then you have the Christmas in the past, and you have the Sea Santa celebration, big time events down on the coast, and they're looking forward to that.
Well, got a big time election, man, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Did you pick sides on this one?
I did not, Ricky, because I make pretty good money without picking sides. But that being said, no, it's more or less of everybody asks me, and I tell them, I say, what's more important to you? Is it more important the economic development? Is it more important to you your health care? Is it more important to you of these taxes this way? Is it more important to you? What is the most important feeling of you? If you can mirror that and you can point that out, then you're going to make those decisions. And a lot of local decisions, especially like with Go Mesa money, Tidelands money, there's a lot of hanging on the line with that. So
I tell you, I hate political ads. Just there half truths and misinformation and all that plays up in it. Obviously on both sides, but it'd be interesting as it relates to the governor's race if it ends up in a runoff, because you've got a you got an independent candidate that has backed out, but her name is still going to be on the ballot. And I think whether it's a protest vote on the part of Presley or a protest vote on the part of Tate Reeves, it won't take 3 or 4% of the people to vote for that independent, and suddenly you may be forcing this thing into a runoff.
Well, and I think, unfortunately for the governor this time around, is that he doesn't have the Donald Trump scenario. He doesn't have, which he had in Tupelo last year when former President Trump came to his backing really in Tupelo, and that really was a big Jim Hood community, and where he pretty much was able to gather some votes from him. Although I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the same way. It's just that's what it's starting to look like. And Commissioner Presley's gotten quite a bunch of money from National Democrats. Whether that's good or bad, it is what it is. And there's a lot of talk in the here, there, and the other. They do have the one debate scheduled, but I'm not necessarily sure what. I think that's up in Jackson somewhere. I'm not sure the timeline of that either. So. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch it. It will be, and we will see. I mean, politics in Mississippi. Listen, on the governor's race, it's always going to be close, as Haley Barber says. So, voter turnout is going to be really important, and so on. So business is good for you, my friend?
It's good. It's good right now. Everything just kind of moving forward, trying to get ready for the new year. I of course love the holiday season, around Christmas, because not so much because the paper is slower, but there's more advertisements available. There's more people that are interested in getting their message out there, and especially right around Black Friday, right after Thanksgiving and things as such. That's a huge advertisement portion. But there's some little feature stories here and there going around. Like I spoke to you earlier about the past estates property, which is an important issue, I think, in my community. And that's the most important thing, Ricky, is to keep local. Got to have an important community news section.
I miss the good old days, man. When you mentioned Black Friday, the good old days when we had this great press at the Sun Herald, and we couldn't fit everything in. We had so many ads, and we would sometimes we'd pre-run not one, but two sections in order to get it all in. And we would have, 20, 30 full page ads from Gafers. And those days are gone, but man, it was incredible. Car dealer ads and classified, fighting over who's going to get color and who's going to get full color. And man, oh man, were those the days. I miss it because the role that newspapers play in the community, not that they don't still play a role like that. It's just not going to ever be like it was. That is for sure. Hey, Hunter Dawkins, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. I'll be headed back home tomorrow, and always give props to my son and being able to come out here and visit him and be happy.
Safe travels. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.